Welcome to Insights in Business. We are coming to you from 500 Rob Ron Road in Campbell River from Rogers Community TV Studio. I'm Mary Ruth Snyder, the host of today's show, and our very special guest today is JP Obbagy from the Homolka Nation, and he is the new General Manager for Business Development. Is that correct? Is that the way to say it?
CEO of
CEO.
the Homolka Business Group and Economic Development.
All right. So, but before we get into all of the things that are happening, why don't we start with where you started? Where are you from, JP?
I am originally a prairie boy from the very south of southern Alberta, south of Lethbridge, actually far enough south that I looked into Montana for 18 years of my life.
Oh, wow.
From the farm. And so small farming community. I grew up in a Hungarian farming area. We had our own little community hall and everything, and everybody kind of worked together. And my hometown is Milk River, which is about 20 minutes from our farm by car, and that's where I went to school. It's a town of about, well, now it's about 900 people. It was about 1,000 people when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so I did all of my secondary education there.
Okay.
And yeah.
So you grew up right in the town or out on a farm?
Out on the farm.
Out on the farm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So we had a mixed farm with about 1,100 acres of our own land, about which 2/3 was broken land, and we did dry land crops, and then the other third was cattle.
Okay.
And then we, together with my uncle, we rented another 2.5 sections of land.
Okay.
For a number of years.
All right.
Yeah.
So growing up, running wild on the farm, what's your favorite memory?
Cruising down the prairie trails on my motorbike with my dog on my lap.
He rode with you?
Yeah, he rode. Yeah, he was great. As soon as the bike got started up, he'd jump up on the seat and away we'd go.
What kind of dog was he?
He was a mutt.
Okay.
He was. I apparently I've learned. I never realized it at the time. I don't know why, but he was a small dog, but he never acted like a small dog. So he was probably about yay big, about yay high. And
so maybe a little border collie in there?
There was a little collie in there. There was
Yeah.
a little bit of everything in there. And he was a goer. He was game for anything.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pepper.
That was his name?
Pepper, yes.
Now, how long did you stay on the farm before you ventured off into the world?
18 years. So I did my all my grade school there, grade school and high school. And then when I turned 18, I went off to go to college in Calgary. Started at SAIT, actually in medical lab technology. My mom was a nurse, so I knew the hospital really well.
All right.
And quickly realized that wasn't the right path for me.
Okay.
Being stuck in, underground in a lab all day wasn't my bag.
So how long were you in school before you figured that out?
1 semester.
And then what?
And then I took a break and moved to Lloydminster with a friend who was going out to work in the oil patch, and I worked out there for a few months.
Okay.
And then came back and went back to school, University of Lethbridge. And then I proceeded to do the Alberta tour. I did a year at University of Lethbridge and a couple of years at University of Edmonton, and then kind of had an epiphany moment there for a program and finished off my degree at University of Calgary.
And what was your degree finally in?
It was a Bachelor of Commerce degree. So it was a business degree with a concentration in tourism management.
Oh, even back then.
It was, that was the epiphany moment when I was at U of A, I was really trying to figure out where I was going and what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I'd taken a year off and gone traveling and spent a few months working for my uncle in Australia at a resort. And so
another uncle, or the same uncle that you have the farm
another
with?
Uncle.
Another uncle,
Yeah.
okay.
And that is where I started to learn about the business world and about tourism. And then so I went back to U of A, and actually in January of the second term, right at the beginning, there was a small article in the Edmonton Journal about this proposed new program at University of Calgary as a concentration in tourism and hospitality management through the business school. And like within a week, I had my transfer application in. It was just, that's exactly what I've been looking for.
Okay.
And that's what I ended up in.
Now, how long were you in Australia?
Let me think. A few weeks in New Zealand, and then I spent 4 months in Australia.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago. So what was it about I haven't been to either, but I understand that New Zealand is very similar geographically to Vancouver Island.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Actually.
And had you been to the island yet? At that point?
No, I had not.
Oh, okay. So New Zealand was a brand new experience for you then?
Brand new. Yeah, it was like Vancouver Island with lots of sheep.
Okay.
Yeah, so everywhere you go, there's these like beautiful green hills and mountains and white dots all over. Yeah.
And then flipping over to Australia, like they are completely opposite in terms
Very
of
different.
geography.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you going from New Zealand to Australia?
I wanted to go back to New Zealand.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I still want to go back to New Zealand. I haven't been back since. Australia was fun, and I was young. We had a good time.
Bondi Beach.
Bondi Beach, and then beaches further north, and New Year's in Queensland. So there was fun to be had. And I was traveling with some buddies from university who had also taken a year break.
Okay.
And so we bought this. We bought an old 1971 or 72 Holden 4-door that was barely running, and the guys wouldn't drive, so I had to learn how to drive on the other side of the road, and we had some adventures.
I'll bet you did. Now, how long were you in Australia?
4 months.
4 months, okay. So
I basically ran out of money.
As most do. You're not alone. So after having those experiences of New Zealand and Australia and having that exploration adventure, when you got back to Alberta, is that when it really solidified for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that was when Australia was where it piqued my interest in business and the tourism industry, and then I was able to find a career path, an educational career path that took me down that road.
Okay.
And that's that brought me. It's been my chosen career since then, was tourism.
So after you did the training or finished your degree at the University of Calgary, did you ever consider going back to the family farm, or was that just a off the table even before that?
It always on my mind, but it was never really my thing.
Okay.
My father had always encouraged us to go find something that might be a little bit easier in life to do.
Yes.
And it came around again where there was the opportunity to go back, and by then I was far down a career path already.
Okay. All right. So after graduation, what was your first job in tourism?
It was kind of, even while I was in school, I did a co-op program. So I worked in total for a year, and 8 months of that program I spent working in Banff and Canmore with it was a joint project with the Southern Alberta Hostling Association and the Alpine Club of Canada.
Oh,
so I actually lived at the Alpine Club's clubhouse in Canmore for a full summer and more, and that was another epiphany moment where just being in the Rockies, changed my perspective, because up until then I was looking at, okay, well, I'll get a job with one of the top hotels in Calgary, work my way up the corporate ladder, and then spent a summer, living with a bunch of dirtbag climbers and becoming a climber myself, and getting into, mountain biking and everything else the mountains had to offer, and just it was my calling. So as soon as I graduated, I moved back to Canmore, and started working with a tour company there. It was focused on the group tour market, both motor coach tours, and then also with corporate travel, corporate group travel, where we were working with large corporate incentive programs, and doing some crazy things to host them, summer and winter, and and so I did that for a couple of years, and then realized that some of my core beliefs in how I wanted to present the destination, and focus on individuals and really focus on the environment and awareness, didn't match the corporate group game. And so I quit and started my own business, and did that for a number of years.
All right. So you were focused in on the biodiversity and the ecological systems long before it was cool to be that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, when I was in university, I did one of my projects. I did a project on ecotourism, which was nascent at that time. It was brand new, and Costa Rica was sort of the forefront of developing an ecotourism industry. So I did a project on them, and really got into it. So I took that with me after school, and that whole philosophy of, we've got to protect the land that we're utilizing, and that's been, I've taken that into all my work since then.
Okay, and that is now at the leading forefront of every single tourism discussion right across Canada.
Yeah.
And arguably throughout the world. And I know that Costa Rica, I read an article in the last year, is it 93% of their forests are protected?
I believe it's something like...
It's hot, really astonishingly
high. Yeah.
And I just thought, wow, like if the rest of us could follow suit, it would totally change the dynamic of climate change on the planet right now.
It would. A little caveat to that we always have to be aware of, and that I've had to come to terms with as my career has progressed, is that we live in wooden houses, and we've got wooden furniture, and so there, forest products will always be part of our world. Even from a sustainability viewpoint, I see timber as more sustainable than plastic. So anything we can do, but it's managed forestry,
right?
In my view, and
and there's a growing there's a growing entity in hemp and bamboo.
Yes.
Because they also have now proven to be incredibly I believe that they can grow bamboo because it grows so quickly, like in a matter of, I think it's a 2-year turnaround. Like it grows, they can cut it, utilize it, and then it grows again in 2 years to the same height where it can be used again. Like
exactly,
I think it's 2 years. And hemp is also becoming a really well-known fabric, right, for making everything from canvas to clothing and it's much more sustainable than the cotton industry. So.
Yes. Yeah. Long ways to go. A long way to go. There's a lot of there's a lot coming down the pipeline that we can do things better for sure.
Right. So how many years now have you been in the tourism industry? Just ballpark. I'm not trying to get you to give away your age.
So 31, 32.
Okay.
32 years, yes.
Okay. So in that 32 years.
Not including time in Australia.
Okay.
And in school.
So in that 32 years, what would you say has been the biggest shift that you have seen for the positive, and then the biggest shift for the negative?
That's a big question. So the biggest shift for the positive is definitely awareness of the interconnectedness of all of the systems that tourism plays a role in. So if you look at it's not just environmental, but it's social and cultural. So where ecotourism was a word that was in play in the 90s, that moved to sustainable tourism, and now the catchphrase is regenerative tourism, with regenerative tourism taking the approach that it's not just about sustaining or doing things sustainably or an environmentally friendly way, but it's actually making the world better with what we're doing.
Okay.
So it's how do you create a tourism business and ecosystem that contributes back to making the environment that you operate in better? Tourism has a bad rap for, on the environmental level, on the cultural and social level, with cultural impacts that take place and maybe not appropriate cultural representation when you're selling other people's culture, basically is what takes place. And then on the social side with, you build a big resort, you've got a whole bunch of people that are brought in to man or staff the resort, and you need housing for them, and it has, it can displace housing for people that live in the community, and it can change the dynamic of the community through that. So when you look at this concept around regenerative tourism, which is one that I am very much in favor of and do work with 4VI on their board, and they're a new social enterprise that grew out of Tourism Vancouver Island, and is now a social enterprise focused on making tourism on Vancouver Island better forever. That is a positive approach to tourism, and one that I can be, from when I had Good Earth Travel Adventures, which was my own business, and now that I work with Homolko Wildlife and Cultural Tours, that I can say I've had a bit of a play in that, and especially with Homolko Tours and what we're doing now, and how we're giving back and creating cultural opportunities and cultural and language growth, and all of our tourism product within the Homolko Tour Company. There's conservation fees, and we even have a cultural revitalization fee that goes back into supporting salmon rehabilitation, to supporting grizzly bear research and conservation.
And that's all up in the Butte Inlet, right? Where
our stuff takes place in the Butte, and around here, Discovery Islands. we contribute to whale conservation, and then on our cultural programs, this past year we raised about $4,000 through our cultural revitalization fee that will go to support Homolka youth on a cultural exchange to New Zealand this spring.
Okay.
Actually,
Great.
Homolka Maori exchange.
Now, it's funny because I was just talking to somebody today that I hadn't seen for a while, and she's recently retired. And I said, "Oh, so are you and your husband going to get away for a couple?" And she goes, "You know what? I cannot justify getting on a plane." And I was like, and she said, I cannot justify flying because of what it's costing the environment." And that was such it was the first time I'd actually ever heard somebody take such a firm stand against that. And of course, here in the Strathcona Regional District and throughout Vancouver Island, tourism plays a huge part
and it's growing
in our economy, and it's the fastest growing sector of any of them. So in your role and in all of the companies that you're now representing and all the collaborative work you're doing with 4VI and other companies throughout the island, how are you guys going to balance having people fly from all over the world to come here? Like, how are we going to balance that as a society here on the island? That, like, I know that's a big question, and I know that it's complicated, but we've got to start somewhere. So where do we start with that?
Well, you're right, it is a big question, and no easy solution. So in anything that we do, whatever sector that we're working in, there's no easy solution. So as far as tourism goes, one is, for our own business with Homolka Wildlife and Cultural Tours, we get a lot of locals. We get a lot of BC residents.
Okay.
We love having that. We get a lot of Canadians who, from Alberta and other parts of BC. Mm-hmm. People that are coming further away are obviously flying. So the more local we can get, the better. I'm a proponent of smaller is better. So it's something that I look at in all of our operations. So part of it is, yes, we've got big carbon emissions from just getting people to our destination. But as people learn more about the destination, there's more people that will be coming to our destination. So now the focus then becomes on how do we have a positive impact on that. So partly we can encourage people, to try and choose methods of transportation that are least impactful, to purchase carbon credits, where and contribute that way.
Okay.
In our own practices, here's an example. Well, one, all of the fees that we build into our programs go back into the community that we're operating in.
Right.
In terms of conservation. We do fuel analysis on our boats so that we can see, we tune our boats and we train our skippers so that we're using the least amount of fuel possible.
Okay.
And we're getting much more scientific in our approach to that, just with boat trim and
Do you
speeds.
see electrical boats on the future?
Funny you ask that. Actually, in this year's future.
Oh.
So we are currently building 2 new boats locally with Eaglecraft.
Wow.
And
Eaglecraft is shifting into the electrical engines?
with us, we're the prototype. So
Wow.
it's not
Cool.
Marine technology is not at a place yet to the distances that we have to travel and the environment that we operate in.
Yep.
Marine electrification is not there yet.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we're doing a hybrid of a single engine diesel
Okay.
That's Volvo's most efficient engine right now, for the power that we need for these boats, and combined with an electric outboard propulsion system. So what that means is, because I've looked into this for 3-4 years now on how we could do it, and our distances traveled here are just too great for what we're doing, and the seas are too dynamic. Let's say that.
I mean, we know that we have some of the worst, most dangerous tides.
It's challenging
through it's crazy.
So the power requirements for that, the boat would have to be built be an entire battery, which we just that's not practical. So what right now, while it's going through this phase, we wanted to get into it at the beginning to really start to test where this can go and also reduce our impacts. So like when we're out on a whale watching tour, when we get on, when we're around marine mammals now, we can turn off the diesel engine and go silent with our electric. So, we're going to be restricted to say 5 to 7 knots. But when we're with animals, then we can go very, very quietly, so that at least the sound impact is much lower.
Right.
And then also while we're on electric, then our carbon footprint decreases as well.
Right. Okay. So those are very positive developments. That gives me a little bit of hope. Now, we're almost out of time. So in closing, what would you say to anyone considering a career in tourism? Is it something that is going to keep growing, or should they be looking elsewhere?
I love the career path that I chose. So I think, if you want to, if your goal is to get into an industry and you want to make maximum dollars right from the start, that's not the way it works. You got to work your way up, and there are some very, very good careers in tourism once you get experience. And there's so many different parts of the sector that you can go with. It's a very rewarding career path. And I look at where it's taken me. So I've moved into tourism, working with Homolko for the past 6 years, Homolko First Nation. I've through the business learning I've done through tourism, I'm working now with a water taxi business. I'm working with a radio station. I've helped a radio station along, and now I'm moving into a larger economic development portfolio, looking at hydroelectric projects, looking at development projects. So yes, tourism is a good career path, and it can take you places.
Okay, and on that note, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story with us. It's very inspiring, as I thought it might be. Really appreciate your time today, JP. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary Ruth. I appreciate being here.
You've been watching Insights in Business. Please join us again.